Okay, this is a heated topic. For centuries, the role of women in church leadership has sparked debate and division, and let's be honest, some really heated conversation. But here's the question I want to talk about today. Are we still stuck in debating what Scripture says, or are we actively trying to figure out how we can empower women in what God's calling them to do, regardless of what you think scripturally? Now, I'm not compromising. Okay, we're going to talk today about encouraging churches to engage with this issue, not just theologically, but practically. Okay, so let's talk about that here today on the Healthy Church Staff podcast. My name's Todd Rhodes. I'm one of the co-founders over at chemistrystaffing.com. There are four things. We talk to churches all day, every day. We talk to candidates all day, every day. And we try to match them together. And there are four things that we've really determined that come to the top whenever we talk to a church or whenever we talk to a potential staff member. And I'll just go over those really quickly. The first is the whole theological debate on Reformed and Arminian theology. That's number one. Number two is spiritual gifts. Are all the gifts for today? Are they not for today? Number three, cultural issues like LGBTQ theology and interests, and where you come down on how you minister to different groups of people. And then number four is the whole egalitarian complementarian debate. Okay, what can women do? Can they do everything? Can they do hardly nothing? It's a theological issue, but it's not just a theological issue, because it's not just about if women can lead, it's about how we can equip and support them to lead well in whatever roles theologically that you come up with that they can serve in, okay? So let's move beyond the debate and dive into this a little bit. You might say, Todd, is this even possible? And hopefully the short answer is yes. We do want to encourage women in leadership roles effectively and biblically, those leadership roles that we ask them to take on. And let's put all of our cards on the table here. And let's talk about the biblical conversation, okay? Because you have to start there, right? Depending on where your church lands theologically, we work with churches, we work with staunchly complementarian churches. We work with some fully egalitarian churches. We work with a lot of churches in the middle. But depending where your church lands theologically, discussions about women in leadership will vary very widely, okay? Some are going to point to passages like 2 Timothy 2:12. Others are going to emphasize examples like in Judges with Judges 4 and 5 with Deborah, maybe Phoebe in Romans 16, Priscilla in Acts 18. No matter where you land, one thing is clear, and I think wherever you are on that spectrum, hopefully we can all agree on this. Women have played essential roles in Scripture and in the early church. So what I would suggest is, instead of focusing on the division, and that's really where we kind of land and just stay there, let's shift the conversation to an opportunity of how we can encourage women, however you come down theologically. How can you encourage women who feel called to ministry? Okay, and even the staunchest complementarian, most staunch complementarian will still say that, yes, women can be called to ministry. That ministry might look a little bit different, right? It might not be, we don't think you can be called if you're a woman to a senior pastor, but you can still be called to ministry. How can we support them in their leadership roles, however you come down theologically? How can we ensure that all of our churches are stewarding the gifts that God has given to his people, and primarily women? And the first thing I think that we can do is just break down some of those barriers. I'm not asking for a theological compromise, okay? I'm not asking, this video is not about getting you to change from egalitarian to complementarian or complementarian to egalitarian. It's not about that at all. It's not just about theology. Encouraging ministry in women, it is about theology, but it's also about culture. Many gifted women feel called to leadership, but they do encounter those obstacles, whether it's lack of mentorship or those invisible barriers or just self-doubt. So how can churches help foster an environment where women are encouraged to lead in whatever roles that you're open to? And one of these things that you can do is to create some leadership pathways. Many churches have really clear discipleship and leadership tracks for men, but they don't have any intentional pathways for women. So how is your church identifying and equipping women to lead in whatever roles that you have for them? Are there mentorship programs? Are there training opportunities that are available? How do you do that? How do you take advantage of how God has wired and called many of the female members of your church and your congregation? How do we encourage investment in their development? Leadership requires growth, and encouraging women in their volunteer and staff roles at church means that we should be providing some coaching and some networking opportunities and some education. We should support, I don't know that anybody is against theological training or ministry coaching. For those kinds of opportunities are hugely helpful to everyone, okay? And then let's try to create a culture of support. Many women hesitate to step into leadership because they don't feel supported. Whatever leadership they step into, churches must come alongside and affirm their gifts and really try to break down some of those unspoken biases that may discourage women from even taking any type of leadership in our church. Most of all, I think women want some honor and respect. They bring gifts that sometimes men don't have, and often we overlook those gifts. And we need to take some time to recognize and celebrate the contributions that many of the female leaders in our churches are bringing. We need to honor their impact, and whether they're leading a department in your church, maybe they're leading your kids or your youth or on the worship team or discipling people, other women, what can you do to really encourage them? Can women lead in the church? Absolutely. And according to your theology in this issue, they may lead differently, but women still lead. And the real question really at that point isn't if women can lead, it's how can we better support them? How can we help them to step into the leadership roles that God is calling them to? Because a healthy church is one where both men and women, using the gifts that God has given them and God has called them to, make Jesus known. I hope this has been helpful to you. I hope it hasn't been too controversial to you. I'm not trying to take a theological stance. I'm trying to say you have people in your church, half of your church, some of which have been called to do some really great things and lead in some really great areas. How are you encouraging them to do? I think most of our churches would close down if all of our female volunteers and all of our women that are leading just said, I'm not going to do this anymore. You need to encourage them. You need to support them. You need to help them thrive in your own church. Love to hear your comments, and you may have some comments for me on this one. I totally get it. It's all part of getting a healthy church, getting a healthy church staff. That's what we're all about at Chemistry Staffing. It's what we're all about here on the Healthy Church Staff Podcast. You can send your comments to me anytime, podcast@chemistrystaffing.com. You can also, I would love to be able to work with you in your church. If there's any way that I can help you in any kind of healthy staff initiatives or hiring or firing even church staff, that's what I'm passionate about, in helping churches really make healthy transitions on their staff team and having a healthy church staff. Reach out to me anytime, podcast@chemistrystaffing.com. I would love to hear from you, and we'll see you again right here on the Healthy Church Staff Podcast.